Walking the serpentine path, following the footsteps of the ancestors. Walking the serpentine path, making our way back home. Hey ya, hey, hey ya ho, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya ho. Hey ya, hey, hey ya ho. Following the serpentine path. Life. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Serpentine Path Podcast. My name is Claire Wadiasid. I'm your host, and today it is a wonderful joy and pleasure to welcome my guest to the show, Kim. She's calling all the way from the Philippines. To give a little bit of context, Kim and I actually met, God, I guess it was like a decade ago, almost.
Yeah, a decade ago. Yeah.
We were in college. I was getting my BFA in dance. She was getting her MFA in New York City. And we crossed paths, but we never really connected so much, but we've stayed in each other's orbits. And Kim has been an early supporter of the podcast from like some of the very first episodes. It has meant the world to me, the amount of support that she has offered. She has sent me such beautiful reflections and responses to some of the early episodes. She sent me like art that some of the episodes had inspired. And then recently, I think it was like back in August, she reached out to me to talk about some big resolutions that she was experiencing with her reproductive health. And so when I got the idea for my upcoming group class, the Natural Birth Control series, many things fell into place. And I realized that it was really vital and important to invite women onto the show who had their own stories with hormonal birth controls and contraceptives and IUDs. And so I sent out an open call to a lot of women. And then I also reached out to women who I knew personally. And I was like, hey, you have a really incredible birth control story. Do you want to come on the show? And Kim was one of those women. So I reached out to her and she was willing to come on the show with all the courage and vulnerability that is required. And so it's really an honor to be able to hold her story today.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Claire, for having me.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'll start with how it all started. I have PCOS and I was diagnosed when I was 18, no, 17. That year I was turning 18. I was diagnosed when I was 17, and what led me to the gynecologist's office was really debilitating menstrual cramps. Um, I also had irregular periods, but I felt the cramps like was the more pressing concern. And by that I mean like I would faint from the pain, and it happened quite a number of times. Like there was one time I was going up to my room and I started to feel pain, so I sat on the step and then I ended up like sprawled across the staircase. Thankfully, my sister saw me. Didn't make it to my room, fainted there. And there was this other time I was at the gym. Thankfully, I started to feel a pain again. And thankfully, like the people there helped me out of the treadmill and like lay me down the floor. And there I fainted there also. And it even happened at the US Embassy here. I was getting my visa and I started to feel a pain there while waiting for my appointment, my interview. And the next thing I knew, I was like lying down on a bench and someone was trying to shove a oxygen tube into my nose, which caused me to sneeze. And that's how I woke up. And I saw that someone was massaging my feet and my hands because they were like this. Um, so yeah, like that it was a thing that happened to me a lot of the time, like in my teenage early 20s. And so I went to the gynecologist's office after that US Embassy episode because the doctor there said that you need to get checked, you need to go to a neurologist or whatever. Anyway, I went to a gynecologist, and so was asked to get an ultrasound, and I did, and went back and was told I had PCOS, and this was the first time I ever heard that ever. Yeah. And I didn't think to ask at that time. I wasn't very curious about my body. I just really wanted to get rid of the pain. That was it. Um, and so I kind of just accepted that PCOS was the image that I saw in the ultrasound, just like my dotted ovaries, like polka dot ovaries. That's what I called it then. And that was it. Um, and I was quickly prescribed the pill. And I was told that, yeah, we'll try this brand, Althea, and you try to drink it the same time every day, and we'll see after 3 months if this is a match for you. So it was more about like finding the perfect match with these pills rather than, like it being like taking pills to try to treat that what was happening to me. Um, so yeah, I didn't question. I didn't at all. And looking back, like I wish I had, but I felt like I also didn't have the courage to ask. So I just accepted the pill, and I was like, okay, there was a promise that this would make me feel better. So I took it without really asking what it was and what I was putting in my body. So um yeah, the moment I went on the pill, I hated it almost immediately. Like it was so immediate to me. Like I didn't feel good on it at all. But at the same time, I didn't know how else to help myself. And being on the pill kind of gave me a semblance of trying to do something about my condition, which I felt like I needed to. So, and I was like, okay, like this doctor told me to do this. Like I should trust this doctor, right? And that was kind of my mindset then. And so I was on it for 3 months, and I came back and I said, like, I was getting really terrible headaches, super terrible mood swings. I feel sorry for anyone I interacted with during that time because I was just like just very mean, and just like didn't think to pause before I said anything, just like out of control. Um, So yeah, I said like I don't really like this brand, and so I was put on another brand. So I felt like I was like dating all these like women pills, trying to find like the perfect match. Um so the next round, like I was put on it for 6 months, and it was a little bit better. I still had side effects. I was gaining weight like crazy. um, but I didn't have the headaches. And at that point, I told myself, like, okay, at least I am not fainting. And so I kind of like just weighed the side effects versus the fainting. And I said, like, just pick the lesser evil, Kim. So that was me then. And I also was getting a bleed, which I would later learn that is not a menstruation at all. I didn't know it then. Um, so I was bleeding, and so in a way, like I could predict when I might feel pain in my belly, because prior to that, when I was fainting from my menstrual cramps, because I had irregular periods, I had no idea when it would happen. And if I was caught off guard without any painkillers, I would faint. And it was so scary. That was the scariest part of it all for me because I hated the feeling of getting cold sweats and knowing it was about to happen. And my fingers and my toes would stiffen up, and I would feel out of breath, like out of oxygen. And I'm not exaggerating when I say like I always felt like I was going to die every time it happened, like always. And I would be so scared. And it was the only time like I would pray, like I don't want to die. Yeah. I would be like lying down and just like praying, like I don't want to die yet. And every time, another thought that I remember thinking during those times was like I had friends who had given birth already at that point, and I would ask them, okay, what does giving birth feel like? And some of them would say it's like 10 times your menstrual cramps. Like that was the common thing I heard. And every time like I would be, like on the floor, like suffering from my menstrual cramps, I'd think, wow, like 10 times of this, I think that would kill me for sure. Like those were some of the thoughts that I I had when I was on the floor trying to survive my cramps. So yeah, what happened after that was I was on and off the pill because I couldn't stomach being on it consistently. So I would be on it for like 3 to 6 months cycles and then off of it because I just couldn't take it for whatever reason. And every time I came off of it, all of my symptoms, of course, just came back because they're just there. They're not being treated. And I didn't know that. And it, at that time, I thought, okay, well, then I need to take the pill now because the symptoms are back. And so I felt like beholden to these pills, even though I hated them. Yeah, I felt like I was at their mercy and nothing else could help me. I didn't have any other resources, and I also didn't have like the urge or the courage to find those resources at that time. I was very young and I just wanted to dance. Um, I just wanted to get through dance class without like dying from my period. And I also didn't, I wasn't around a lot of people who had the same experience of cramps. Most of my close friends then had regular periods, and they would say, oh, like it's their first day, whatever, and they would feel like a bit of pain, but they could still dance. Like I could see them dancing, and I couldn't reconcile that with my experience of cramps because I couldn't do anything if I had the cramps. So I felt quite alone also in that way because I had no, like, I didn't know anyone who went through the same thing. And me being a shy person back then and also introverted, like, I didn't think to like go out of my circle to find the people who had these similar experiences. So I was on and off that pill for maybe 7 years. I think it was actually when I was in New York that I took it the last time because I tried to take it while I was there in New York, I felt this really strong fear that I had never felt before. I was like, I feel like I'm destroying my body. That was the feeling. And it was so strong that it scared me. And I was also alone in New York. Like I didn't have my family, and that was my first time living alone in a different country also. So I felt like, I don't know, I just didn't feel safe taking it. And so I said, okay, I should just stop. And so I stopped. And of course, my symptoms were still there. And I was just managing my cramps with painkillers. That's what happened. And I think, okay, so apart from the side effects that I was experiencing from these pills, what I really want to say is that during this time of being on the pill, and also when I came off of it, I just felt unbeautiful. Like not ugly, but just like I felt like I couldn't access beauty. And it didn't matter what other people said. I just, people sometimes would compliment me and I couldn't receive it at all. And it started with, like I would deny, deny all, geese in denial. I would get a compliment and I would just like shove it back to the person. That was the first phase of it. And then it turned into, okay, like Kim, like have the decency at least to acknowledge that someone complimented you and say thank you. It became about that. I started saying thank you, even though I didn't believe what they were saying. And then that went from that to, okay, I acknowledge that you complimented me. Thank you. And I want so much to believe what you are saying. Like, I really want that to reach me, but I didn't know how because my body was so inflamed. There was a very, very thick coat in my mind, in my heart, in my body that, like, all of these things couldn't penetrate. And even though I could name like 100 things that were beautiful in my life during those years, I couldn't feel them. It's just numb. Yeah. Maybe I'll pause here for a moment.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that whole first part of things. And your story mirrors so much of my story and so much of pretty much every woman who goes on this pill, right? Like, I originally went on it for hormonal acne and didn't question it at all. My mom was in the doctor's office with me. She had been on the pill for 10 years. My grandma had been on the pill for 8 years. It was just like the normal thing to do. I come from a very medicalized family. I come from a family of allopathic doctors. Further back, is more traditional healers, but the more recent generations is all like Western medicine. And so that was the solution. And I was at a point, I wasn't actually, my menstrual cycle was pretty painful, actually, when I think about my teenage years and heavy bleeding and all of that. But my biggest thing was acne, and I was embarrassed. And what you were speaking to about beauty, like, I was a 16-year-old girl. I'm wanting to have my, initiation into flirtation and dating and romance and sexuality and all of that. And I feel disgusting. And so when I got on the pill and my acne went away, I was like, woohoo, like it took away that and it took away my painful cramps. Like it regulated my menstrual cycle. Awesome. That's what the doctors told me. But then, something that you were speaking to that I'll go a little bit more in depth with is that any of the symptoms that we go on the pill for, so hormonal acne, irregular periods, maybe absent periods, painful periods, any of the other reproductive issues that people are like looking for support with, and they're given the pill as the answer, or the hormonal IUD, or the injection, or whatever. Especially with the pill, they say, oh, it'll regulate your period, which is a lie. It doesn't regulate your period. It completely shuts your menstrual cycle down. And so when you were talking about that first time you went on and the rage that you were experiencing and just being unkind to everyone, what I was thinking of that is like, well, think about when women go through menopause, when they go through that transition of like their menstrual cycle ending, there's a lot of menopausal rage that is coming up. There's a big spiritual purging that is happening for a menopausal woman, but she goes through it in a gradual process. She's not like shocked into it or forced into it by the complete shutdown of her hormonal matrix. And as soon as you said that, I was like, oh man, it's like the menopausal rage for like a, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 16-year-old. Like it's crazy to modulate your hormones so drastically like that. And the lie of regulating your period. Oh, now my period is normal when I take these pills because I'm getting a hormonal withdrawal bleed consistently every month. And it's also totally understandable that you were like, well, at least I can predict the pain now. At least I'm not living in fear that I'm going to pass out with this level of pain that makes me feel like I'm going to die. Like, yeah, I would do the same thing. I think any woman who didn't have any other resourcing would do the exact same thing. They're like, I feel like I'm going to die. This is so scary. And it's so isolating. You didn't have any other women in your circle who were mirroring your similar experiences with your bleed. You didn't have any doctors who could give you actual answers. And then it's such an unbelievably isolating thing to go through so many countless experiences of literally passing out from pain and your body freezing up and not knowing where you are or what's going on. Like, talk about the ongoing shock that occurs in the body every time. that is then also related to procreation, like you were speaking to about the deep fear of like, if giving birth is 10 times more painful than this, I'll die. And so then there's this huge separation from your own desire potentially to have future children, because it's like, well, there's no fucking way I could do that. And I remember feeling that when I got my copper IUD inserted, which she told me, like, we're going to induce a contraction. And when that happened and I felt that contraction in that insertion, I was like, oh, there's no fucking way I could ever have kids. Like the block, the womb imprint that occurred in that experience was like such a block around motherhood for me for many, many years. And then, the masking of the symptoms, they get better. I'm saying that in quotes, like they get better when you're on the pill and then you go off of them and they're not just back, but they're worse because the underlying cause, the underlying like root dis-ease in the body isn't being addressed. It's actually getting worse because it's going untreated, and it's getting worse because of all of the ways in which that shutdown of your hormonal matrix impacts your liver, impacts your kidneys, impacts your whole reproductive matrix, impacts your entire endocrine system, all of that. And so it's just compounding and it's getting worse. And so you have women who go on and off and on and off, and it's just getting worse. And they're like, well, what do I do? And then many of them get to like that point, as you were speaking to, of like this like psycho spiritual awakening where it's just like, no more. I can't do it. I cannot do this anymore. And I think the last thing I'll touch on is just really empathizing with that sense of feeling numb and not being able to receive reflection of your beauty and to feel it. And you see so much beauty outside in the world, and people are telling you beautiful things about you, and you can't receive it because your own feminine vitality is not online. And so you're like, well, what are you even seeing? Because I'm not even here. That's how I felt when I was on the pill. Like I'm not even here. I'm not even alive in my body. I'm off in the ethers somewhere. I'm offline. And so, yeah, just all of that. I really, I've lived it. I get it. I totally understand it. I'd love to hear now about, what the process looked like when you were finally like, all right, I'm good. I'm off this, and what your healing journey has looked like since then.
So after I went off of it and decided that I was going to stay off of it and just like manage my cramps with painkillers, I I moved back to the Philippines after we finished school, and I was there for 2 years before I moved to Singapore for a job. Um, I moved to Singapore in 2019, and it was in 2020. That was the year of the pandemic, right? Yeah. I was in Singapore. I spent the pandemic there, and it was in 2020 when the lockdown started worldwide that the seed for my healing was planted. And it happened like this. So I was on my phone at home there in Singapore. I was just doom scrolling and super random. I I ended up on Allegra's blog. And I know you had her on the podcast, right? You had her. And I mean, like we were also in school together. I never actually spoke with her while I was there, but of course I knew her because we were in the studio together. And I wasn't even following her on social media at that time. I think maybe it was just like maybe a common contact that reposted something. I don't know. I just ended up on her blog, and I was just like, hey, I think I know this person. Is it this person? Like I think I went to school with her, and I just wanted to check if I was right. So I clicked on the link and I ended up on her blog, and I didn't know it was about her. I didn't know she was writing about her period. Didn't know she wrote so beautifully. Um, Super. And I read her piece about, I think, her period coming back after being absent for a long time. And at the end of it, I was crying. I was crying. I was like uncontrollably crying, and I didn't understand why. And the first thing that I said after reading that to myself was, the first thing that came out of me was, I want to write like that. That was the first thing that came out of me. So shout out to Allegra. Thank you so much for the inspiration. Um, yeah, I was like, I want to write like that. And that's how my Saturn return started. That's the start of my Saturn return. And that was a big thing for me to say because I spent years and years saying that I hate writing, that it's not for me. I have no talent in this. And yeah, it's just not my thing. And that started when I transferred schools, when I started my secondary education. So for context, I was in a Montessori elementary school here in the Philippines, and then come high school, I moved to an all-girls Catholic high school, which was a lot more competitive and like traditional. I stopped reading and writing for pleasure when I moved to that school. Um, and as a kid, I loved to write poems. I had this like notebook, and I would be so thrilled by the task of finding rhyming words that like made sense to what I was wanting to say. I loved it as a kid, but I stopped writing when I was in high school because I got so frustrated with words. I got frustrated that I needed to consult like a dictionary 5 times to get through one page. It started then in high school when that change of environment. And so I kind of like distanced myself from writing deliberately and I clung to dance even more. That's a big thing that happened to me back then. And that also coincided with the start of my period. Yeah. And so for me to say that like I want to write like this, that was big for me. And at the end of the her post, I think she recommended this book about the it was Alyssa Vitti's book In the Flow. Yeah, about the cycle and the phases of the cycle. And so I got the book and I started to read it. And that was the first time I ever learned about the phases. I That was the first time I was learning about my cycle. And that was also difficult for me to move through because there was a lot of shame around that about not knowing anything, zero about my cycle, apart from the only thing I knew when I got my period was that, okay, I can get pregnant now. And two was, okay, when you bleed, you put a sanitary napkin so you don't stain your underwear. That's it. That's all I knew. And I was so embarrassed by that, when I was reading this, I'm like, I don't know anything. Like, why don't I know anything about this? And there was so much shame around that I had to work through. But I kept reading the book because it was so interesting and um, it made so much sense. Like I resonated with everything that was being said there, and there was also a short like part there about PCOS because I know the author also has PCOS and she reversed her symptoms. So I was inspired, and so that was the start of me at least trying to incorporate foods that are supportive for each phase. That's how it started. But I wasn't very consistent. I just I just tried to incorporate things because it was like, this is interesting. Let me try this. And what happened was there were months where I would get my bleed. I was still irregular. I would get my bleed and not have any cramps. So I was like, okay, this is new. Like it was completely new to me. And I knew that that month I had like incorporated some of the things I was reading. I tried them out. So that was the start of it. Again, I wasn't very consistent, but yeah, that was the beginning of my journey, I think, that would unfold for 4 more years. Um, the following year, so that was 2020, 2021 was the year that I started writing a lot. The whole year. I was like, words were pouring out of me, and I couldn't understand like why there was so much to say. Like every experience I had, like wanted to be written down. And this time it felt like I felt enamored by the challenge of finding the words. to describe my experience rather than feeling frustrated. And that was a new experience for me. So I was like, okay, and the sentences would come to me fully formed. It's like I could hear someone whisper to me what to be written. And so I would just like write, and I wrote so much that year, so much so that the following year, 2022, I felt like I'd poured so much of myself onto paper that I needed to replenish that. So I read so much in 2022. And for context, like I wasn't reading a lot. I guess at most I would read like 2 to 3 books in a year. I would finish 2 to 3 books in a year. And in 2022, I read like 60 plus books, which is a huge jump. So I was like, what's going on? What is going on? Like suddenly I was just like very adamant in doing like all of these things that I set aside for so long. And this also coincided with me experiencing like a kind of like breakup with dance. My identity as a dancer was being severed, and that was very painful for me to go through. Also because in Singapore I was teaching dance, but I was not dancing. I felt so disconnected from it. So I think that kind of like because I didn't have dance to like save me in a way or to like I didn't have it to rely on anymore because it wasn't working. It wasn't giving me what it used to give me. Also, being in front of a lot of mirrors wasn't helping because I still wasn't happy in my body at all. And I kept seeing that. So I turned to books and words instead. That's what happened during that time. And I was moving through a lot of grief. Also, with my Singapore stint coming to a close and deciding to move back here, um, I was ready to let go of dance. Like I moved back here thinking I was done with dance. And I was like, okay, like this is it. This is where it ends and it's okay. I can let it go now. So I was that's what happened when I came back. And when that was so I came back in 2023. I already had writing with me, I had reading with me, so I had other things now besides dance. Dance also eventually came back that year when I finally like let go of that like dancer identity. I actually started to enjoy dance, right? Yeah. So I actually started to enjoy dance and I think, maybe more in touch now with my body. At least I started learning that I could listen to my body, that it was something to be listened to. Because prior to that, it felt like, I think also with the dance training that I received, my body felt like something I could manipulate. Right. And it's true. Like you can manipulate your body to make certain shapes and that's all good. But if you don't have like the proper guidance that you need during that time, especially as a young person, it can very easily swing the other way and you can feel like your body is something you need to control all of the time. Right. And so I think being in New York in school there also helped me because prior to that, didn't have a lot of improvisation classes or training. And so I think it was very new to me to go there and experience, like a whole session of improvisation and someone just like guiding you and you could do anything you wanted. And so that's kind of like when I realized, oh, like I could listen to my body, that it had an intelligence of its own. And if I can bring myself to surrender to this moment, something bigger than me will take over and move my body. So that was the first time I experienced that there. And I guess maybe being a teacher in dance also you kind of carry that with you and you want to pass it on to the people in your class. So that was an important piece of that was to learn that I could listen to my body. I felt like at that time in 2023, I wasn't as sharp as I am now, but it was a start. And I continued to try to incorporate the foods that I learned about in the book. So 2023 was about kind of recalibrating as I moved back here and saying yes to new experiences because I had the courage to do that already. So I was slowly coming back to my body, not quite there yet. It was in 2024, last year, in April, May, I think April, May, June, that my period went missing. So at this point, I was still irregular, but I would bleed maybe every other month and it would always be delayed, always. But yeah, my period went missing and I felt so sad. I felt so sad. It was so sad. And I felt also disappointed that nothing was working. I was trying to eat the foods, but nothing was working and it wouldn't come back. And I was, vacillating between, like wanting to do something to make it come versus like patiently like waiting to for it to come. So I was like caught between those two things and at the same time I was having like lower back pain, persistent lower back pain. And so I actually went to a therapist, a physical therapist to have that checked in. She she actually told me you might want to see a gynecologist for your lower back pain. And so like that kind of like brought me back to okay, so this might be about my womb. The lower back pain might not be, I mean, might not be about like just a weak core or whatever, you know? And so that's what brought me back to the gynecologist after years. This was last year. That was in July. I went in July, okay, last year. I already had a feeling that I would be told to take pills again. I already had that feeling, but I was like, okay, like let's just try. Okay, like I'll be open-minded about it. Found a gynecologist, a different one, and I came there and had a, and she like did a pap smear, and I told her, yeah, my period's missing, and she gave me progesterone, synthetic progesterone to like make me bleed, and she told me to come back for my pap smear results, and I came back in maybe in 2 weeks, I think, like I picked up my results. Anyway, during that time, it was like a wake-up call, and I realized like, shit, what if something's wrong? And what if like this whole time that my symptoms were going unmanaged, like maybe something happened, and what if it's really bad? And I got scared. And also, she told me, as I'd expected, once you bleed, I might have to put you on the pill. Yeah, because like it's just always like the solution. Okay, so I was like, I'll come back. I will come back. I don't want to be put on the pill. I'll come back. I'll take the progesterone suppositories and I'll come back. So I came back after 2 weeks. And during this time, like sorry, I forgot to mention when I came home from that appointment, the ride home, I was so angry because I, even though I expected like I would be told to take the pill, I was still very angry about it because why is there still no other option? Why? Like, why can't you offer me anything else but that? And I already know, like, I feel terrible on it. And I told her that during that appointment. I said, I don't want to be on the pill. I feel awful on it. And I want to feel awful. So I went on my phone and I told myself, along with like the fear that I felt, waiting for the results, I said, okay, like I need to help myself and I need to do my own research. So I just typed PCOS, literally just typed PCOS on Instagram, the search bar, and just clicked the first. There are a lot of accounts that came up. I just clicked on the first one, and the thing that I learned on that ride home was the one thing that I learned during that short ride was that women with PCOS tend to have like gluten and dairy sensitivity. She said, like on her page, that if you're feeling bloated after eating, you might want to try lessening or cutting gluten and dairy for 30 days just as an experiment to see if it alleviates any of your discomfort, your bloating. And at that time, I was like just very open to trying anything but pills. I was like, okay, let me just try this. And I didn't do it gradually. Like the moment I came home, it was lunchtime and I already cut it out just because I'm just like extreme like that. I just don't do things gradually. Yeah. So I stopped eating gluten and dairy just to see if it would help me. And that was difficult because it's not really a thing here, I think, as much as it is a thing there. Like it's hard to find gluten-free, dairy-free places here. And I had to learn what foods actually contain gluten and dairy. So it wasn't like perfectly out of my diet, but I was like trying to lessen it at least. And then 2 weeks passed, so I came back for the results. And of course, like when you're at the doctor, they weigh you. And I was weighed the last time I was there. And then when they weighed me again, I saw that I'd lost 5 pounds. And I was so surprised, like, because I was like, it's just, yeah, it was just like 2 weeks ago. But I lost 5 pounds, and I did notice that the bands of my shorts and my pants were like getting looser. And so I was like, okay. So then I started to continue being off of gluten and dairy. And I noticed that I wasn't feeling bloated anymore after eating. So I thought, okay, maybe I am a bit, I do have sensitivity to these things. So I stayed off of gluten and dairy and noticed that I started to enjoy eating. Yeah, which was huge for me because I didn't think I really had any problem with eating. I mean, I would eat before, like never, like I didn't have any problem saying I love food, I love eating, like I would eat. But I always felt bloated afterwards, and so I would always control the amount of food that I was eating. And I never figured out like what that amount was to avoid the bloating. Didn't realize it was about the food that I was eating. So finally, like I started to feel like very full and satiated and ready to give energy after eating. And it was the first time I was experiencing that. I was like, wow, I ate so much, but like I don't feel any bloating at all, nothing. And that was amazing for me to experience because I realized like, wow, there's another layer. Like I was saying that I loved eating before and I loved food, but I didn't realize that I liked the idea of eating and food. And now I was actually enjoying the actual food. So like I felt like I got a layer deeper into things. And when I came back to get my results, thankfully the results were fine. And I said that, okay, yeah, I bled from your progesterone suppositories, and she saw my weight, like, my weight, like I lost weight. And she said, okay, I'm going to give you a pill. And I said, like, I already told you, like, I don't want to be on the pill. I already said that. I couldn't understand, like, what wasn't clear about that. So I said, no, I'm not going to be on the pill. Like, I really don't want to be. Can you offer me anything else? So she said, okay. She was iffy about that. She didn't want to offer anything else. Like, she really thought, like, the pill would be the solution. But she instead told me to continue to lose weight, which is super vague piece of advice. And like, and I was like, okay, and to have like a balanced diet. I'm like, okay, what's a balanced diet? And she said, like, you might want to try like a Mediterranean diet. I'm like, at that point, I was just like, okay, like I'm gonna help myself instead. I'm gonna help myself instead. So yeah. So, and then she said, like, okay, can you come back here after like how many months? Like, I said that was July. And so she's told me to come back in October. Um, and if by then I didn't have my period, if or my period was still irregular, then I would have to be on the pill. I was so angry when I left. I was super angry when I left the office that day. And that was kind of when I decided to take things into my hands. And that I was already experiencing some relief by just, changing what I ate. And so, like, that whole thing opened up for me. And I realized that, wow, there are things that I can do to help myself. And it's just like, I just, it's just food. Like, that's the first thing I did. And then I started taking walks after my meals, 10-minute walks after my meals. And then I started drinking spearmint tea. And then, like, I just started adding all of these things that I was reading about PCOS that support PCOS. And I was like slowly layering them when I felt ready and not too overwhelmed with, like, because there's so much you can do actually. There's a lot. And there's a lot of information to parse through, and it could feel really overwhelming at first. So I just made sure to like do it like a step at a time and see what works for me. So I journaled a lot during this time to track my progress. I started seed cycling, which was really helpful. And so after a month from that second visit, I got my bleed for the first time, like naturally. And it was such a surprise because I thought that it would come much, much later. I thought I'd need more time. But I remember like going, like waking up and going for my first pee and then seeing the blood, and I started crying on the toilet. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it's here. Like, I can't believe it's here. It came. And and so that was also an important lesson for me. Just as much as I could listen to my body, the body also listens to me and to my effort. So I learned that, and I I I always say like now I always say that the body listens to us and it leaves no honest efforts unnoticed. It's just that the body operates on a different concept of time, and we need to accept that. And it's going to feel slower because uh, that's just our reference point. It's speed, it's linear time, it's fast or slow. But it's not just about the speed, like the time of the body is totally different. Like there are many ways to describe it. It's multi-dimensional, right? And so I started to describe time in different ways to sort of help myself with that, slower pace.
Oh, it's beautiful. And I love that Allegra was someone who came in, Allegra Bruce, who is a dear sister. She's been on the podcast. I actually just went to Miami to celebrate her wedding. She's 8 months pregnant now, which is amazing. So it's funny that you're like, she was talking about getting her bleed back. And I was like, oh, she's not going to be bleeding for a while currently. So I love that she brought that in for you. And yeah, I so relate to like the breakup with dance and then the learning how to come back to it and the control that you learn to have over your body and to relate to your body in a way that is manipulation and force. And if I do this, then my body will do this. And I feel like that really wraps up into what you were just speaking to at the end of like the body has its own timeline and it's not linear. And I really feel that the body is like quite psychedelic and quantum and cosmic in that there are times, yeah, where healing does take time. Healing takes time, it takes slowness, it takes acceptance, it takes relationship, it takes intimacy, it takes curiosity, and it takes just surrender. And then there have been times where I have experienced like full on miraculous healings like in a night, or like in an hour, like something shifts in me, or in a month, where something that I've been dealing with for 10 years resolves itself and I'm like rebirthed. And I think that that is like the true power of the female body is that we have this death and rebirth cycle that we go through every single month. It's our fifth vital sign. It is like literally the indicator of health. And so when you were speaking to like seeing the blood and being so surprised and being so happy to see blood come back, it's like, well, yeah, we're happy because our blood every month is a sign of vitality. It shows us where our health is at as women. And so when we don't have that for such a long time, being on the pill, being on a fake menstrual cycle, a fake hormonal bleed, having irregular periods, like it really does send you into this manic place. Like I've been taking these homeopathic remedies to work through a lot of stuff. And my homeopath told me, like, your cycle might be a little bit off. And I'm very regular at this point. I wasn't for a long time, but for many years now, I've been very, very regular. My cycle was 9 days late, and I felt like I was going fucking crazy. I was like, where am I? I don't have any orientation. I don't know where my North Star is. I don't know where my mountains are. Like, where am I in my body, in time, space? Like, I felt like I was just floating. And the moment my bleed came, I was like, oh, that's where I am. That's where I am. I'm home. And I felt that, I'm on my third day of my bleed now. And I felt that on Monday when my bleed came, it arrived and I was like, I feel at home. I know where I'm at. Like it's a new beginning. I'm releasing, I'm dying, I'm rebirthing. Okay, new cycle. What is the energy I'm calling in? What am I letting go? Like it is this natural reorientation. And I loved what you were speaking to about just slowly implementing things. Like when you got to the point where you were so pissed off at the doctor for being like, you can't offer me anything, anything. I've been going through this for like over a decade, and the answer is still the pill. Like, how? How is this possible? The frustration that comes with that and the anger, and learning how to channel that into a way that brought you towards like a slow, layered process of deep intimacy with your body, intimacy with food, which so many women have blocks around, right? Like so many women are struggling with some form of disordered eating pattern or body dysmorphia or just hatred of our flesh and our femininity and our curves and whatever we look like. And going through that process that was like this almost kind of the second part of returning to food. Like you first came to the food stuff with Alyssa Viti's work, which her book is awesome. Both of her books, Woman Code and In the Flow. Those were like kind of my first introductions into all of this kind of cyclical awareness and cyclical living. But when it first came up, there was so much shame, embarrassment. Like, how did I not know this? Like the unraveling of the like, why was none of this taught to me? And why didn't I know this? And this is my body. And it's so painful. I've been through that too. Many, many layers of that. The more that I learn in my education, the more I'm like, what the fuck? How did I not know this? It is painful. But then you got that repair of being like, okay, I'm ready now to actually slowly integrate this. I'm ready to move through the shame. Like I'm angry enough to transmute all of that charge into what my healing is really going to look like. So I think that part of the story is so important because I know a lot of women move through that. That's a big sticky spot to get through and it takes time. Like you said, it takes time. Yeah, you can continue on. Go ahead.
Yeah, and ever since like I started this in July, right, of last year, which is like super perfect timing because I think you launched your podcast in August, if I'm not mistaken. Like it's just the perfect time. And like I saw it and I started listening to it and it was like the perfect companion to what I was like moving through. Super. It was so helpful. Thank you so much for your work. Yeah. Um, so I started to notice that I was clear with what I was willing to do and not willing to do. That was easier for me to know. And it was easier for me to make decisions too, because I could hear my thoughts better and I could hear my body better. Right? Yeah, because prior to that, like I said, I was so inflamed that, when you have a sprain and your foot, like your ankle is inflamed, you know it's there and you can feel like there's this very thick. coat around it. You try to move it and you know you're moving it, but you don't see it moving. So, yeah, it was like that for me for a really long time. And I felt locked out of my body. And now I could hear it. It was so clear, so much clearer, and I could make decisions more easily. And I also started to notice when I was really stressed. So I stopped using the phrase I'm stressed very loosely because I would just like, say it before, like, whatever, I'm stressed or whatever. But like now I can really tell when I'm stressed because my period would be delayed. Yeah, it would be delayed. And so during this time, since July up until, so it's been a year of this healing process. I'm so, so proud of myself because I've had my period every single month. And like that's like the biggest achievement of my life. It's really the biggest achievement of my life. And during this year, there were two instances where my period was delayed. And those two times, I definitely was stressed. Yeah, so the first time it was like emotional stress and I cried it out. And after that, the following day, I had my period after that release. So, like, wow, that's so amazing. And then the second time was a lot trickier because I wasn't, it wasn't like emotional stress. It was more physical. Like I was just tired from exerting myself, from speaking the whole day. So I was just tired this month a lot. Wasn't feeling sad or anything, but my period wasn't here yet, and I was waiting for it. And I remember during this time, my friend from Hong Kong visited, and I hadn't seen her in a long time. She's also a dear dance friend from my childhood. And we spent one afternoon just in the studio, like dancing together, because we hadn't done that in a long time. And I was just laughing the whole afternoon because I hadn't seen her in a long time. And I remember, sending her off, and she's on her way home. We were still laughing, and I felt my blood come out. And so I realized, like, wow, laughter is also a form of release. Because I think at that point I was just thinking, like, I think I need to cry for my period to come because that's what happened the last time. But I didn't feel like any like stimulus to cry. So like there was no motivation to cry, but I was laughing and I realized, okay, that's also a form of release. So these are just like small lessons that I've learned along the way. And I also started to get more vivid dreams. Yeah. And there was one month that I remember I was already awake, but I still had my eyes closed. And I was deciding whether I would like open them and, get started on my day. And I was still dreaming. I was like at the end of my dream, about to leave my dream. Suddenly, like this river, like I just saw a river and then it just like started gushing towards me. I opened my eyes and felt my blood come out. And I immediately went into a plank because my sheets were white and I didn't want to stain them. So I was like, oh my God, shit, like it's here. And then I ran to the toilet. And yeah, so it like that was an interesting moment because like literally the moment that river in my dream like started flowing, that's when my blood came out. Yeah. So I started having like these experiences, and I still do have these experiences. And also, another thing that I learned throughout the year was that there are times that it can feel like you need to perfect it because I was, I'd fallen into this routine and I kind of had these things, these tools to help myself during every month. And you recently released an article about period trackers, and I started with that early on. I don't anymore. I don't use the period trackers anymore, but because I noticed that I was starting to feel like I was starting to become perfectionist about it. Like, why wouldn't it come? Like, this is the schedule, it's not here. Oh my God, like there's something wrong. Like I need to fix something. So it became about that. And so, I said like, okay, like I need to stay off of this because it's not helping. So I realized like, it's really not about perfecting it because it's not going to be perfect. And it's really more about learning to bring yourself to a state of being able to respond to your body. Yeah. So that's another thing that I learned. And also, a big part of this is spending time in nature as well. That's, yeah, that's the biggest piece that I haven't mentioned yet, spending time in nature because nature is the best teacher for listening for me. So after I eat, I'm just lucky that I live in the city, but I live in a neighborhood with a lot of trees. So I spend a lot of time with the trees. Yeah, that's the best medicine, I think. And sometimes I feel like we think so hard about something and then we don't have to think hard. I mean, I often still feel like I need to think hard about something, but what I really need is to look at my surroundings, to look at what nature is showing me, because oftentimes the answer or the wisdom is like in the position of a rock or the stance of a tree or the direction of the rays of the sun in that moment or even like the scent of, I don't know, burning Palo Santo or your lavender tea. Sometimes it's there. Like wisdom is everywhere. It's everywhere. And that we have to fabricate it or that we have to study hard to gain that wisdom, I think sometimes it's like misguided because it's not always about like active action. It's not about like going to it, but sometimes it's about like sitting back and making use of your chair's backrest and just being open to your environment to receive what's there. And I always say, and I like to keep saying that, receiving is also a verb.
Oh, so beautiful. And I remember that first email when you reached out to me after I had released the podcast, and you were in that phase where you were like, okay, I said no to the birth control. I'm figuring it out. Do you have some resources? And I sent you some stuff. And, I didn't hear from you about that in particular for a long time. And then in August, you were like, I just wanted to let you know I've had a whole year of consistent cycles. And I was like, that, like what you said, like the biggest accomplishment of your life, like that is so fucking huge. Just congratulations and just honoring and celebrating your path, your healing, your work, your journey, coming back home to yourself is just it's monumental. And speaking to all of the creativity that flowed forth, all of the writing, the reading, coming back into your relationship with dance, like coming back into what your vital feminine expression is of your life force energy, which is so tied to our bleed. I said when we first got on the call, I was like, oh my God, you look so different. Like you look vital. Your skin is glowing. Like I see the lack of inflammation. I see the lack of just chronic stress. Like I see you in so much alignment with feminine health, with your reproductive health. Like it's gorgeous to see you as you are now versus when we first met almost a decade ago, right? What you were speaking to around the intuition and the dreams and like the psychic nature of coming back into alignment with your menstrual cycle cannot be underplayed, right? It is like, I think the tool of wisdom for women is the intuition that we receive from our cycle and from our womb, and being able to tap into those altered states of consciousness that we're in. The menstrual cycle is a full altered state of consciousness. The line that separates the two hemispheres of our brain, the bundle of nerves, is literally dissolved. And our two hemispheres of our brains are working together at the exact same time. And so our intuition is like heightened when we bleed. And when we cut that off by severing our menstrual cycle with hormonal contraceptives, we don't have access to that. We don't have our dreams. We don't have our visions. What you were speaking to about the connection with nature, all of that. I mean, it's beautiful. being able to orient to nature as our truest teacher, because we humans came from all of our elemental ancestors, right? We were birthed from that. And then also, I loved what you spoke to about, the period tracker apps. I'll include a link to that essay that I wrote. But yeah, I did the same thing when I was first learning how to track my cycle. I was really diligent about it because I'm a good student and I'm a dancer. And so I'm a perfectionist and I was trying to perfect my period, right? Like I became obsessed with getting it right, getting it perfect. And anytime that my period app said that it was supposed to be the first day of my bleed and I wasn't bleeding yet, like the shame and the like, oh my God, I'm still broken. I'm still wrong. I still have to fix it. Like I'll never do it right, you know? And it's why I really stepped away from using period tracker apps, but also even from like fertility awareness method, which I'm trained in. I know how to offer that to women, but like diligently tracking your temperature and like going through charting and all of that kind of stuff. I did that for a while and it didn't land in my body. And what I have developed over the years is a method that I really refer to as like biointuitive fertility observation, which is what you were speaking to of like, can I just wake up in the morning and feel my energy levels, feel my hunger, feel my libido, tap into my dream state, tap into my intuition, tap into like my physical experience and my psycho-spiritual experience, like what my womb psyche connection is telling me, and know what phase of my cycle I'm in. And I've been doing that for years, and I can track very consistently when my bleed is going to be coming, when I'm ovulating, when I'm in my fertile window, how to avoid pregnancy, but more than anything, how to live like a womb-centric life to really allow my womb to drive the show and to be in constant relationality with it and in deep, intimate communion with it. And that is going to be the second class that I teach in the natural birth control series course that I'm offering. That first class is for women who are wanting to transition off of hormonal IUDs and contraceptives. All of the repair and preparation that you can offer to your body to support your liver, your kidneys, your lymphatic system, your digestion, all of the spiritual work, all of the prayers, all of the womb altar creation, all of the calling in of the wise womb ancestors, all of that work as well. And then that second class is all about, yeah, learning biointuitive fertility observation and understanding your natural fertility signals. And then the last class that I'll be teaching in that three-part series is going to be all about working with plants for pregnancy prevention. So for women who essentially want to use a form of natural birth control in order to avoid pregnancy. So all of that is like wrapped into what you were speaking to. Like it is a class on natural birth control, but more than anything, it's a class on like womb re-education and reclaiming those wise womb ways that all of our ancestors from every single lineage, every single culture, every continent, every race, whatever, like they all had their ways of knowing how to be in right relationship with the medicine of womanhood, the medicine of our menstrual cycle, the medicine of our blood, of our womb, of our fertility, our ovulation, everything. So that is going to be available to women if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, I want to learn about this, not from a place of urgency, not from a place of fear, not from a place of like, what the fuck do I do? But really from a place of like, I feel ready to dip my toe into this. I feel ready to open the door. I feel ready to receive support, community witnessing, education, care. I feel ready to be back in ceremony with women around the world. I want to do this and I want to be part of this collective womb consciousness prayer. And so that's what we're going to be diving really deep into. Kim will be in the class with us as well as a lot of other women who are coming onto the show to share their birth control stories. So, ah, thank you. Thank you so much, Kim. Do you want to say anything else before we wrap up?
Thank you so much, Claire. I think I just want to say to anyone who's listening, um, talk to your body and make it a point to thank your body every day for what it continues to do for you.
Hell yeah. Talk to your body. Mm, thank you. Thank you so much, Kim. This has been such a joy and a pleasure. And I look forward to being in class with you and feeling your energy in the space as someone who has moved through such an immense journey. Like I feel that your presence in the Zoom room is going to be really, really vital for the women who are moving through stages of their journey that you have traversed through. So thank you so much.